One Piece Pirate Warriors 4 has released the first DLC pack of its second character pass, the Battle of Onigashima pack, as well as the first part of the additional episodes pack. The character pack brings in a new version of Luffy with the ability to form change into Gear 5, a new version of Kaido in his hybrid form that follows the source material more accurately than the first Kaido did, and the brand new character Yamato that can also form change into their Zoan hybrid form. The episode pack brings a new game mode called Yamato's Adventures, which can be accessed from the new special log option on the main menu. This includes 4 levels that introduce a new gameplay style that revolves around exploring various maps from the game to uncover secret events and collect points. Depending on your point score at the end, you can receive different upgrade materials as rewards, including a new kind of material known as souls. Souls are used on another new feature known as soul maps. Similar to the existing growth maps, soul maps have various islands that can be upgraded with souls to increase the stats of all characters, allowing you to upgrade your characters beyond the previous maximum level of 18. Everyone gets Soul Map 0 for free with the update, but Soul Maps 1 to 3 are included in the episode pack. Currently only Soul Map 0 and 1 are available, with Soul Map 2 releasing with the next character pack and special log episode, and Soul Map 3 releasing with the update after that. Soul Maps also allow you to further upgrade your skills from the previous maximum level of 3 to the new max of 5. New skills are also included that can already reach level 5. These new skills are Rocket Man, which increases the speed of your power dashes, Rage of Lion, which increases your damage dealt to strong enemies, Shatter, which boosts damage against enemies that aren't in armor break state, Worked Up, which increases the length of full force bursts and form changes depending on your combo hits, and Heat Up, which increases damage based on combo hits. Recently I've had my comments inform me of a Google Spreadsheet made by Nighlin that contains extensive information on the exact stats and multipliers of characters and skills throughout the game. I remember seeing something like this years ago, but it wasn't as extensive then and I never really checked it again, assuming it is the same one. Regardless, this thing is a lifesaver, as it saves me from having to test every single skill to check the damage difference and teaches me stuff that isn't properly communicated in-game. The most important being that there is a limit to the amount of damage boosts you can get from skills, being 5 times. This means that there isn't as much of a need to load up on damage skills, since Cheat Death alone already accounts for most if not all the damage boost you'll need, as its max damage boost is 5 times when you're at 5% HP. I'll leave a link in the description so you can reference it yourself for the specifics, but this will definitely be a big help to me in future when testing builds for characters and making videos. The spreadsheet includes info on the new skills as well, which clarifies further how they work. Adding this with my own testing, here are my thoughts on how the new skills measure up. Rocket Man says that it gradually increases the speed of power dashes, but it feels more like a flat boost that isn't affected too much by the length of your dash, so sky types don't get a huge advantage other than already having a longer continuous dash. Not a terrible skill, and it's only 1 slot, but it'll mainly be useful on larger maps, and even then only if the whole map is being used. Still better than nothing if you need to fill a slot. Rage of Lion seems like an easy pick for more damage, and it does increase by a fair bit, but it also takes up 2 slots, so it might not be as worth it as some other lower cost skills with the same multiplier. Shatter seems really good at first, and it'll definitely help characters with low armor break, but it probably won't be much use to characters with really good or instant armor break, since they won't be worrying about armor much anyway, and the boost disappears once you've broken armor. It seems like a skill that ignores armor, but according to the spreadsheet, it just boosts damage against enemies that still have armor. Not as amazing as some are making it out to be, but still, only needing 1 slot makes it a good choice when building a character. Worked Up and Heat Up focus on an existing mechanic, combo hits, that existed before but had no use and was simply a number that went up in the corner of the screen and was mostly ignored. Now, combo hits are actually important and something to take into account when ranking the characters in this game, due to these skills requiring a consistent combo count to be most effective. Heat Up is a good choice for a damage boosting skill since it only needs 1 slot, and you only need to hit a 2000 combo for the max boost, but it disappears if your combo resets. I thought it would keep ramping up the higher your combo went, but knowing there's a cap and that it's fairly low, thanks to the spreadsheet, was a nice clarification. It's not too hard to keep a combo, as you can drag enemies along with power dashes or continue to hit defeated enemies while waiting for more to spawn, but cutscenes like the ones in True Pirate Warriors will auto-reset your combo, unless you use a cinematic 3 or 4 star special, as they pause the reset timer for the duration. Worked Up is an additional way to extend your full force burst and form changes, similar to Resilience and Devotion, and only costs 1 slot the same way they do, meaning even longer burst times than before if you equip all 3. The difference with this skill is its reliance on combo hits, which determine how much it extends the duration by. It isn't a set duration based on your combo before activating burst, or just your highest combo so far, but rather it seems to refill the gauge as it's draining, meaning you are actively refilling it manually by hitting enemies and keeping a combo going. Good for characters with high combo and nice to be able to stay in form changes for longer, but maybe not as good as a flat duration boost for characters who struggle with combo. These are all good skills and a welcome addition to the game, although I was worried the new skills wouldn't be as strong as some old skills are, due to them being able to go to level 5 from release instead of being designed for level 3 and then improved further. It seemed that way in testing, but after learning the exact multipliers of both old and new skills, these ones definitely hold up against most of the other skills. Thankfully, we don't need to worry much about replacing skills, as probably the most important thing added with the soul maps is the ability to increase the number of skill slots that characters can have. Soul Map 1 gives 2 extra slots to every character that not only gives room for the newly added skills, but also opens up the existing builds for each character to include skills they may have previously needed to sacrifice due to the strict 6 slot limit. For example, a few technique characters might not have had room for both resilience and devotion as well as good damage skills, due to needing more defense or a specific skill to make up for a weakness in the character or to help with their gimmick. This is a great improvement that it affects every character in the game, as now they can be re-evaluated as much better than they were before with larger and more diverse build options. Now, before we go over characters, let's recap what makes a character good and how to build skills for a character with the knowledge from the spreadsheet as well as the new skills from the update. Breaking armor is probably the most important thing in the game. If a character struggles to break armor, then they're gonna have a hard time, especially against invincible enemies. Some characters can do exceptionally well against enemies and never have to worry about armor break, but suddenly struggle if the enemy becomes invincible. I try to account for the worst case scenario, even if it probably won't happen. So, if a character feels lower than you think they should be, it's not necessarily because they're bad, but more likely that the characters above them have an easier time dealing with the worst case scenario than they do. For example, if a character relies on stun locking with status effects, they probably won't have to worry about the enemy breaking free if they play right. But if the enemy becomes immune to status effects, or fully invincible, then the character you're playing won't be as overwhelmingly powerful anymore, even if they're still good. As for skills, my recommended list is still the same, although now I know that on-land and airborne attack enhancement are pretty bad, since they have low multipliers and they cost 2 slots as opposed to other better skills that only cost 1. Even on land newly upgraded to level 5 is still not great according to the spreadsheet. The damage cap being 5 times and cheat death covering most if not all of that means you don't need to load up on as many damage boosting skills and can save room for more utility, with even more room now thanks to the extra skill slots. That being said, you'll need to take into account where your damage boosts come from, since less damage skills mean they should stay active as much as possible, lest you end up losing damage while intending to optimize it. Hero Strength is the second best damage boost after cheat death, and only requires 200 KOs to activate. But if you're playing a weaker character with bad crowd control, focus too much on a boss, or have no minor enemies to beat due to capturing all the territories, then you'll lose a big chunk of damage. Same with cheat death. If you're playing a lower difficulty mission where enemies can't damage you, or if you equip a skill that heals you, then you can't get the most out of your damage. A lot of people commented saying they like using healing skills, and I won't tell you you're playing the game wrong or anything, but I can't stress enough how big of a damage boost cheat death gives. It completely changes the game. With that, the recommended build for a character should pretty much always start with Cheat Death and Hero Strength for damage, Resilience for longer bursts, and Full Force Burst Enhancement for an extra bit of damage just in case. Other backup damage options are acceptable too, provided the multiplier is good, the condition is easy to fulfill, and it's only one slot, and Undying to protect you while at low health, since it grows alongside Cheat Death and is even stronger now that it can go to level 5. After that, it depends on who you're playing. Concentration helps build specials much faster now that it's level 5, and is good for those who struggle to fill gauges. Worked Up is good for even longer bursts and form changes, with Devotion extending it even more but only for technique types. Tenacity is something I value more now thanks to its flinch resistance helping characters with slow or long attack strings. Deadly Cadence gives invincibility during specials, which helps for slower or weaker characters that want to use lower star specials more safely. Rocket Man can be useful for getting around the map quicker. And Great Pirate's Ire and Lineage Factor are good for characters that rely on status effects. Special damage enhancement isn't as good as I thought, same as land and air enhancement, but I still think it's not terrible despite being 2 slots. And it might be good as an extra boost to fall back on in an emergency with an easy to fulfill and consistent condition. There are skills to increase armor break, but they don't improve it by much and barely make a difference against an invincible enemy. Still not the worst skill to equip, so feel free to use them if they work for you, but since they also don't do anything once armor is broken, they kinda become a waste of a slot. 2 slots if you're using Herculean Strength. Shatter is a nice alternative, but also becomes useless if an enemy has their armor broken or if they're invincible. There's a video by Alchemist Kirito that examines whether or not Sovereign Strength boosts more than just Conqueror's Haki's specials. They came to the conclusion that it also boosts damage for normal attacks on characters with red and black Haki on their attacks, main examples being Shanks, Oden, and the new Luffy in his base form. This would be a great improvement to these characters, although not necessary to reach the damage cap. However, I can't seem to replicate it in-game at all. I 100% agree with him that we need a training room or some form of damage tester, or even just the ability to return to the equip screen without having to die first, because it really is a pain to have to leave and re-enter levels over and over again to test damage, only to need to start over because an enemy jumped out the way of one of your attacks, or an ally showed up just to do a little bit of damage and ruin your whole test. Either way, trying to test the differences between having the skill and not having it yielded almost no difference in damage, and sometimes even less damage when I did have the skill equipped. The spreadsheet also doesn't mention it boosting anything other than just the special, so I'm not sure if there was a variable that Alchemist Kirito didn't account for when testing, or if I'm messing up, or if it got patched secretly, or what. But if any of you can get to the bottom of this, it would be very appreciated, because this would be a cool discovery. The skill is still nice even without the damage boost on normal attacks, if you're using the Conqueror's Haki special, especially on Shanks since that's usually a go-to special for him. Either way, it's up to you how you want to build a character, and there's much more freedom now than before thanks to the soul maps, as well as knowing more about the damage multipliers than I did before. So here's hoping we get more skill slots and more skills with interesting enhancements in the future. Now, let's address some of the characters from the last video that I've since changed my mind on after reading your comments and doing more research. First, with the help of this comment, I finally learned that the point of Bartolomeo's enrage mechanic is that making enemies charge at you refills your special gauges a ton. I also found out that his instant armor break special has good targeting because it specifically falls on enemies you've locked onto. No lock on means it just falls in front of you. With this new info, plus remembering how good Bartolomeo's special damage is, I think he can be pushed up from A to S tier. Carrot has a mechanic I was informed of, where inflicting shock on minor enemies with attacks that knock them away turn them into projectiles that deal good damage to enemies. I was hesitant to put Carrot in S+ due to her struggling with invincibility armor and feeling like a worse Katakuri, but her potentially infinite stun that insta-breaks armor is too good to ignore. And if I can put Blackbeard in S+ despite his terrible armor break, then I shouldn't hold Carrot's bad armor break against her that much either. Mihawk has a big update. where it was pointed out to me that his ground combo 3 does more damage at sword charge level 1 than level 2. More damage is an understatement, as it does some of the most damage in the game, and shreds through armor in an instant. It's short range and it ends quickly, but it's easily repeatable, more so in Full Force Burst. Still no defensive options, although he doesn't really need them, but tenacity helps while making his way through his normal strings, and his 4-star specials do lots of damage while protecting him. Mihawk has been moved up to S+ tier. Another big change comes from Boa Hancock. Before, I considered her good, but nothing amazing, since her stone infliction didn't insta-break armor, and it doesn't ignore it either, and only some of her specials had decent armor break. After focusing more on using status-focused skills, and spamming stone infliction during Full Force Burst, coupled with her technique Absorption or normal after charge attack move, I found she has reliable loops that keep enemies stun locked with no need for dashes to continue your combo. This already elevates her a bit, but after being informed of and looking into her Full Force Burst activation a bit more, I found an even better way to play her. When activating Full Force Burst, Hancock does damage and inflicts stone. It's only short range, and it doesn't keep enemies in place like specials do, but it does good damage and keeps them still after petrifying them. When cancelling a Full Force Burst, it only depletes a small percentage of the total gauge, meaning you can fill it up and reactivate it again fairly quickly after attacking some enemies for a bit. What this means is that Hancock can activate Full Force Burst to petrify an enemy and deal a lot of damage, deactivate Burst, fill it up again, activate it again for more damage and to reapply the stone, and then rinse and repeat until the enemy is defeated, which won't take long due to the large and consistent damage being outputted. The only big downside is that the close range means you're very likely to pick up any health the enemy drops upon defeat, and will have to take damage for cheat death all over again. Still, all of this significantly improves my opinion of her, elevating her to S+ around about where Carrot is, as they both struggle with armor, although Hancock struggles much less with it thanks to her specials, while Carrot does more damage and can stun lock easier. Urouge might not be as good in base form, but his self-proccing damage boost, which is the same as the one Hero's Strength gives you, meaning he might not even need that skill, as well as the ability to cut his own health from the form change, are much better than I gave them credit for. As mentioned, it can be hard to reach low health for cheat death when a mission is just low enough of a level that enemies don't hurt you as much anymore. This is much more prevalent thanks to the increased level cap from the soul maps. Urouge being able to decrease his health forcefully is a great way to combat this, especially since you can use the same strat as Hancock to repeatedly cancel and reactivate his burst to drain his health even faster. You'll need to watch out around low health as the health cut is percent based, but thanks to more options for longer burst times, you won't need to burst as often while you're at low health. Managing health can be a bit tricky when he's low, but Urouge still moves up to S+ alongside Smoothie and Drake. The increase in level cap is also something that needs to be brought up in regards to making these videos. Two of the most frequently mentioned characters in the comments that people thought I underrated were Nami and Shanks, with most saying it was because I wasn't using the right skill loadout or because they still have fun using them for one reason or another. I've reconsidered them a bit and agree I could put them higher, since I probably did undervalue them a bit with things like Shanks doing more armor break when his sword is buffed, and Nami not needing her servant burst that ruins her kit, and potentially having other viable options with different builds. But testing characters has become a lot more difficult, as the highest difficulty level in the game is 20, with true Pirate Warriors only being 18, despite still being one of the better places to test characters. The new level cap is 24, and none of the new Yamato adventures from the DLC are higher than level 15. This means that every character in the game is now much more viable than before, and even characters I had in F tier can output good damage in high level content. As great as this is, it also means I can't fairly rank how good each character is when pushed to their limit, as nothing in the game comes close to reaching that anymore. The only things that significantly set characters apart now is armor break, which no change there as it isn't as affected by higher damage levels, and movement speed, which normally isn't super important, but matters for stuff like Yamato's adventures, which requires you to traverse larger areas in a short amount of time. But once again, the levels are lower difficulty, and as long as you know what you're doing and where to go, then you shouldn't run out of time, and there's no grading at the end either. The meta characters for Yamato's adventures are pretty much just giants at the top, due to their size covering a large distance, as well as being able to destroy structures for more room just by walking into them, with Whitebeard being at the top of that due to having the furthest dash in the game. Then followed by Sky types for their long dashes, then Speed types for their infinite stamina during full force burst, then the rest of the cast, with the priority being characters that require less setup for their good damage. The Rocket Man skill also helps with covering large distances. Thankfully, I was able to test the new characters at level 18 before using the soul maps, so the comparison to the previous characters will be more fair and accurate. Although in future I'll need to be careful when leveling up characters so I can still test them at that same level everyone else was at. Hopefully we'll get more difficult content in future so I can fairly compare everyone at their max potential against difficult content that matches the crazy level ups we're receiving. One more thing that messes with this list is a glitch that affects invincible enemies. There were cases before this update where I would run away to find emergency health pickups while fighting invincible enemies, and come back a while later to find that their invincibility had ended. I didn't pay it much mind, as running away and waiting wasn't exactly a fast and reliable strat to depend upon, especially when going for S rank, and I just assumed I was away for so long that it just ended normally. But after reading a Japanese comment on Twitter that alluded to a glitch in reply to a post about a recent patch, I went to investigate and see if there was something that had broken in the new update. In the middle of fighting Law after he had bursted during a run of True Pirate Warriors, I suddenly started doing damage to him during what was supposed to be his invincibility time. In addition, running away and coming back only a short time later resulted in enemies losing their invincibility as well. I couldn't replicate the loss of invincibility during a fight, so I don't know what causes that, but running away until the enemy is just out of sight and then coming straight back would fairly consistently result in them becoming vulnerable again. This means that characters that struggle with armor need even less reason to worry about it, as the one thing that made the new Shatter skill useless, other than actually breaking armor and losing the boost, was invincibility. Now that that isn't as much of a problem, every character rises up on the list. I'm not sure if this will get fixed or not, so until I'm sure whether or not this bug is sticking around, I won't treat it as the norm, but I'm not going to completely ignore it either. Anyway, I'll still be able to rate the new characters, but all of these circumstances mean a more definitive list will need to wait until a later patch. Most likely at the end of this pass, when we find out if we're getting another one afterwards, and these update videos will just be small-ish additions to the existing video to correct mistakes and add any new characters. Anyway, without further ado, let's take a look at the new characters and see how they compare with the old ones, and where they would go on the existing tier list from the previous video. Once again, in order to fairly rank them, they were tested at level 18 on True Pirate Warriors in the same conditions as everyone else. It's all well and good if a character gets better with certain skills, but you can't fairly compare characters if some have armor break skills and others don't, or if you equip some damage skills on one character and then a completely different set of damage skills on another, or even a similar but not quite the same build. You can experiment and build more with a character afterwards, but to get a baseline from every character, they need to be tested with the same skills, at the same level, in the same mission, with as little variation as possible, and retesting each character multiple times to make sure to account for any variables. Even though I'm testing these characters at level 18, it doesn't differ much from how they are at level 24. They get stronger stats with the extra levels, same as everyone else, but the fundamentals will be the same, and this makes it easier to compare them. First up, we have the new Onigashima Battle version of Luffy. Onigashima Battle Luffy is pretty much just time skip Luffy. He's still a power type with air combos, and has all the same moves and special attacks he had before, but no longer has access to his Gear 4 form changes. The differences start with two new cinematic specials, being Red Rock, which is another option for a good damage 4-star special, but nothing really notable, and Rock Gatling, which is a 3-star special, meaning it charges quicker, that starts with a low damaging multi-hit and then ends with a big single hit. The multi-hit makes it seem disappointing at first, but the final hit not only has big damage to compensate, but also has instant armor break. This is the first time Luffy has had an instant armor break special and is already enough to elevate him higher than the regular version. But the main draw to this Luffy probably won't give you much chance to use it. The main selling point of this pack, and the pass in general, as well as the reason they probably came back to this game to make more DLC, is the implementation of Luffy's new Gear 5 ability. It works as a form change as one would expect it to, but they put a great deal of focus on marketing the form change just as much if not more than the base character, making sure to brush over the base form with barely any changes to let everyone know that Gear 5 is now playable. This reflects in the gameplay through Gear 5 having the new worked up skill as a passive ability, meaning he can always extend the duration of the form even without the skill. And adding the skill makes it last even longer, effectively making it infinite, provided you can keep your combo count up. The intent was very clearly to make the player spend as much time in the form as possible, so that even if it follows the game's rules of being a temporary transformation, it would still feel like Gear 5 was the main part of the kit, and the base form was just a momentary setback before reactivating the form. The form change itself deals damage upon activation, and has Luffy become a Sky type with various wide-range multi-hit moves that focus on building combo hits as frequently as possible. Some combo moves are hard to turn, and will send you in a straight line that can easily miss enemies, but are usually followed by attacks that are very easy to aim or redirect to make up for it. He has pretty good damage, but only decent armor break. It could be worse, since he has lots of movement and a sky dash for safety, but even the combo moves where he becomes a giant don't give as much armor break as I would have hoped they would. Thankfully, he also has an instant armor break special in this form. Bargerang Gun is a wide-range 4-star special with big damage that can be a great tool for dealing with lots of enemies at once. The only downside is that it has a bit of a slow startup and you can't act immediately after it hits, but it's still a great tool to make up for the only weak part of the character. His other 4-star special, I've Reached My Peak, is long range, fast and has good damage. And his 3-star special, Gum Gum Lightning, has a weird hitbox but is fast and also has amazing damage. Luffy can refill specials fairly quick even without concentration, so these specials can be used frequently and are where most of his damage comes from. All of this combined makes Onigashima Battle Luffy a vast improvement over the other Luffys and earns his place alongside some of the best in S+ tier. Kaido also receives an Onigashima Battle version, but unlike Luffy is completely different to his existing version. Onigashima Battle Kaido is a speed-type giant with air combos. Like all the other giants, he continues the trend of having great armor break, additionally supported by his longer normal attack string from being the first speed-type giant. He no longer has access to his form change as a special, but can still transform through his air normal attack string and combos. It only lasts for the duration of those attacks, and he transforms back after touching the ground, so it's not really a form change, but his icon changes to the dragon and the gallery treats it as a different form, and he behaves the same way his form change did with his body's hurt box, as well as suffering from the same long stagger animation. So, he's a giant with speed type mechanics, and he can switch between his normal and beast forms on the fly. That means he's good, right? Unfortunately, despite intending to be a version of Kaido that adapts him at his strongest from the end of the Wano arc, he ends up being significantly weaker than the existing Kaido that was adapted from only the beginning of Wano. Changing from power type means he loses the extra damage from Full Force Burst, which he sorely needed, as his normal attack damage isn't very good. It's a good thing he can easily break armor, because his damage output after doing so isn't great and he'll probably have to re-break it at least once before a boss goes down. I complained before about old Kaido's dragon form change having bad normal attacks that covered a wide range but had low damage and were slow, which was fine because his specials were the main focus of his kit and had a lot of damage to compensate, but new Kaido's dragon moves made me realize how good we had it before. The new air moves have terrible hitboxes that almost never hit anything, and even if they do, it barely does any damage. Kaido also struggles to dash more than once in the air in his dragon form, and is sometimes prevented from using specials in the air due to the short time he has before returning to the ground. Speaking of his specials, they also took a dive in quality. They all deal low damage, and while the low star specials are quickly refillable and repeatable, it doesn't amount to much more damage and kind of interrupts the flow of his combos. The bigger 4-star specials can also miss, with Flame Dragon Torch Rising Dragon Flame Bagua not holding enemies in place, and sometimes hitting with one half of the special and then completely missing the other. And Destroyer of Death Thunder Bagua only hitting us in a small area directly behind Kaido's body, which means that if Kaido gets stuck on the terrain, or if an enemy is against a wall, then it will completely miss and waste the special. Even worse, it also has low armor break. His 3-star special, Conqueror of Three Worlds Ragnaraku, also has a weird tendency to send enemies so high into the air with the initial spin that the following attack will miss. He isn't the worst character by any means, being a giant prevents that by default, and he can still juggle enemies in combos for a decent amount of time, which puts him close to S, but due to everything other than his armor break being subpar, I'm putting him on his own in S- tier, barely making it out of A tier. To end off this DLC pack, we have Yamato, a power type with air combos. Yamato has good damage, good armor break, and can freeze enemies with Ground Combo 3 and the Phantom Freeze special. Yamato also has good special damage, with the Narikabura arrow in particular having very good damage for a 2-star special, and as such is quickly refillable and repeatable. Divine Swiftness White Serpent has a good ending hit, but the initial build-up is slow, it can free enemies from special stun, and can be hard to predict where you'll end up for the final hit. It's better used from far away, but that's not really good for combos. Armor break could be a little bit better, but isn't bad at all, and doesn't stop Yamato from being a great character. But it doesn't stop there, as Yamato also has a form change. Using Human Beast Transformation changes Yamato into a speed type with no air combos. They gain freeze on a majority of their attacks, and have good damage and armor break. Their ground charge attack in particular has very good damage and armor break on top of freeze, and can be spammed to easily destroy enemies with little to no chance of them fighting back. This form also has good special damage, with the 3-star Namuji Glacier Fang being a quick freezing special that fans out and can be manually directed to either cover lots of enemies or focus on one for big damage. Also, for some reason, despite Hybrid Yamato having no air combos, their 4-star Thunder Bagua special does double damage when used in the air. It's a little awkward to use that way, but very worth it due to the large damage increase. The 3-star Thunder Bagua in base form also does more damage in the air, which makes a bit more sense because of base Yamato having air combos. Human Beast Yamato also has a unique mechanic where their taunt gives them brief invincibility for around 3 seconds. It doesn't affect enemies that hit you, and it takes a second to act again after using it, but it's a neat addition. The only real downside to the form change is the lengthy and uncancelable animation that plays when it ends, but that definitely isn't enough to detract from how amazing the form itself is. All of this combines to make a fantastic character that easily earns their place in high S+. Just be sure to equip Great Pirate's Ire for easier freeze infliction, and Lineage Factor if you prefer it lasted longer as well. So, here we have the updated tier list, with Yamato and Luffy added into S+, and the new Kaido given his own tier in S-, because he's almost good enough to be an S, but not quite good enough to be above A. I've condensed the list a bit since, like I said, there's not really any bad characters anymore. There's still some characters that aren't great, like D tier are all still not fantastic, but there's definitely ways to make them better now. I wasn't quite sure where to put Nami, because like I said, I agree that she's probably better than I said, but I don't know how good because I can't properly test her anymore because there's nothing above level 20 in the game. And so her and Shanks can be above D, but not much higher because I still don't really know where to put them. I might also change the difference between S and S+, because like I mainly split them so that I wouldn't have like a huge S tier full of like a million characters because there's so many good ones, and S+ was mainly just for the characters that are so good that it's they're even better than S tier. But it's hard to like blur the line between what's S plus and what's S anymore, so I might just cut that and combine them. I've also removed the top 3 because while I'm still sure that Oden and Akainu are at the top, like the top 2 characters in the game, I'm not as sure on Cracker anymore, and in general, other characters that I had high up because of their defensive options. Because right now, defense doesn't really matter anymore because you're not really going to have to worry about taking damage because everyone's overpowered now. So as much as Cracker is still S+, he's probably not top 3 anymore, even with his infinite biscuit glitch. Because infinite invincibility is great and all, but he takes a lot of setup to have to get back into it and refill his specials and get back into full force burst. So it's not as consistent for something like Yamato's adventures. But I still think he's good, it's just, you know, someone like Kaido can just walk up and smack someone, whereas Cracker has to do like a full setup. He doesn't have to do the full glitch, but, you know, it's an option for him. Yeah, also don't worry too much about the exact placements of characters. Like, yeah, I have Mihawk here above Whitebeard, and maybe that'll upset you, but it's like, don't worry. It's mainly just Mihawk is really, really good, and it's really hard to, like, exactly measure where I want a specific character to be. So, like, I still think Doflamingo is really good, but it's hard to measure him up against a lot of these other characters because he's good for a different reason. Because, like, Drake, Urouge, and Smoothie are all great because they can become giants. And then they're still good normally, but then, you know, are they as good as a normal giant that's just a giant all the time, even if they're, like, not great, like Big Mom or the new Kaido? And then, you know, people that are giants are great just all around. And then Doflamingo is fantastic because he can shred a character's HP in, like, 2 seconds, but he needs a lot of, like, minor enemies to do that. But even if he doesn't have them, he's still good without them. So, you know, it's hard to test. And then, like I said, defensive options aren't as important anymore. So characters like Kizaru and Sabo that I have in S tier simply because they can become invincible might not be in S tier anymore. Simply because, you know, defensive options aren't as wanted of a commodity anymore. But we'll see with next patch, because this one's not exactly a great one to test characters because pretty much everyone's good. It's just, you know, some characters are still bad even with better stats, like Tashigi. Yeah, not as definitive of a list as I would have liked to have given, but I don't know. I'll take the blame somewhat, but also blame Bandai for not giving us any difficult missions to play in this patch. Pray for something high difficulty in the next DLC patch and the one afterwards. That's high difficulty before and after equipping any future soul map upgrades. So yeah, this is more of a work in progress list that's gonna change with every update. And once again, feel free to comment and let me know if you think a character is better than I say they are. By the way, I'll have the links for this tier list as well as the one I used in the previous video to actually credit the original creator, like I should be doing. So you can go and make your own tier list if you want to. Heads up though is that for this one, they didn't have the pre-time skip Straw Hats on there, so I had to add them myself for this video. And there is another tier list that had the pre-time skip Straw Hats and the new characters, but the pictures for the new characters were really zoomed in and looked bad, so I used this one instead. I wish I could be a bit more decisive for this list, but we've got 2 more updates after this, and this was mainly supposed to be an update just to add in the DLC anyway. Like I said, I won't need to go all in on a definitive list until at least the end of the pass. Potentially even later if they announce more passes afterwards. Still, I wanted to address mistakes I'd made and things I'd learned from the last video. Your comments were great to read and I'm so thankful for all the things you've taught me. I love the idea that this can be a collaborative effort where we can put all of our knowledge together and make something better than I could myself. Please keep leaving comments about characters you think I overlooked. It's great to find out that a character I thought was just okay is actually amazing. Just make sure to be detailed in your description and don't just say something like, "This character's good, what are you talking about?" And please be polite and respectful instead of hurling insults just because you disagree with one or more placements. Anyway, I'll see you again for the next DLC pack, which looks like it'll be a Film Red pack based on the data mines and teasers. I'm hoping Uta has an OP status effect like Katakuri and Carrot, since she'll probably be Technique, and will need all the help she can get. I'm hoping that the new Shanks is at least better than the current one, and I'm hoping that Kobe is a surprise top tier character, or just not bad. I'm also hoping once again that we will get more difficult content so I can actually test everyone at the new level cap instead of holding back to try and be fair. There probably won't be as many videos like this for a bit, at least until the next DLC pack comes out, but I'll start doing some research on Pirate Warriors 3, since a lot of you requested it, although it'll take a while, so don't expect it anytime soon. There'll be more edited gameplay videos, like the one I released just before this video, where I played the new Pirate Warriors DLC for the first time, so if you liked that kind of video, then be sure to stick around for more. Hopefully you enjoyed, and I hope to see you again next time.